and welcome to Crack a Can. This is episode 2. I'm joined by Josh and Ross from Godeater. They brought out their album last year, and we're here to celebrate the 1-year anniversary of All Flesh is Grass. Thank you so much for coming on, guys.
It's a pleasure, man. Thank you.
What are you both drinking today is the first question.
I've got a very old man Bundaberg.
Nice.
I was saying to Ross, I was like, it's called Crack a Can. Should I bring a stunt can?
Oh,
Just to, like,
look at wee faker.
For appearance's sake, and then I can sip the Bundaberg otherwise. But yeah, I love this. It's my favourite.
No, fair.
I have, I found in my cupboard a Drygate Cold Years.
Oofed, not bad.
I don't know what the deal with it. Oh, okay, it's higher percentage than I thought it was.
Nice.
Our friend Chris gave us a bunch of stuff like at the start of the year. So it's been left over from them in my cupboard, and I found it, and I'm like, I'll have that.
So you're just sitting drinking up your COVID beer?
Yeah. And I've also got a can of Coke Zero, so it's all balanced.
Oh, nice.
Good. I thought it was just like a cupboard beer that you'd found, and I was like, oh, that sounds a bit grim, but like,
yeah,
refrigerated, that's fine.
No, I forgot to put it in the fridge, and then I had like a wine chiller round it, and so it's cold. It is cold.
Good. Well, thank you so much for coming on, guys. Like, I've been listening to the album pretty much since it dropped, so it's good to actually talk to you about it all.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like a year, but
yeah, like I was gonna say like a year, but then obviously with everything that's happened, it probably doesn't feel like that. Like you must have really got into it.
There was only like 6 months of actual sort of promotional time where we've had since coming out till like about January or something like that. The last two wrapped up, and then so yeah, it's really only been 6 months, but yeah, when you actually put it out, it's a full year. So
yeah, no, that makes sense. Like, so was it the tour with Vex just done, wasn't it, at the start of the year? Was that like the last sort of thing you've got to do?
That's right, yeah. So that was like a 5-day tour, sort of UK, and then we were gonna have like literally like what was it, like the week before lockdown or something like that?
It was the lockdown was on the Monday, and we were meant to be out on the Friday, Saturday, Sunday with Leached.
Right, okay.
And we made the call to kind of postpone the dates. With the idea that the lockdown was probably going to happen the following week, and they kind of the same way. So yeah, it's unfortunate because like they're a great band, but
their stuff's really good.
We probably could. I remember there was still bands doing stuff that weekend, and we're like, but I think just I'm glad we didn't do it.
Yeah,
I just don't think it would have been a good idea at all. The atmosphere was terrible, I think.
It was really weird, like, because the week of like the actual lockdown, I had 5 gigs. So I remember I seen Employed to Serve, and the day before lockdown, I went to see Turnstile, and the next day the country was in lockdown. I was like, maybe I shouldn't have been at a 900 capacity gig last night. If the country's in...
I went to both of those as well. I was
like, really? Palm Reader? Yeah.
And yeah, Turnstile. Garage?
Garage, yeah.
Yeah, I was there.
But it's just mad, like, but there was like other, like, so much smaller gigs were cancelled. So it was like the night after Turnstile, I was supposed to see After the Burial, and that got cancelled like 3 weeks before. That they were so, like, I feel like the American bands were so far ahead of cancelling stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot, because I was meant to go to that. It's like After the Burial and Make Them Suffer, I think.
And Spirit Box as well.
Yeah.
A really good lineup.
They were kind of like, we need to get home.
Yeah, now.
The whole tour's cancelled, and I think there was something else at that as well. It was quite a similar size kind of tour, but there was a few European bands and a few American bands, and the American bands were all just like, there's a travel ban kind of coming, like, we have to go now.
Yeah.
So
I can only imagine how scary that must be. Like, obviously your album came out like a year ago, so like you said, you had that kind of 6 months, but for bands who have like just brought albums out maybe in January or February, or even during lockdown, like, what do you do?
It's just a what though, because I was even feeling that, like, when we brought All Flesh is Grass out, I was a bit like, okay, that's it. Like, this is a worse downer than Christmas. Like, what do you do with it now that it's actually like out and online? Like, you can't really hype it up anymore, so you've just got to do it. And
just play it.
Like, I don't know. I feel like it's a bit of a deadlock, to be honest.
Yeah.
It's one thing for like your Code Oranges and your Triviums to like do
live streams and stuff,
an event around it, and that's amazing. But like, see if you're like a band our size or smaller or bigger, to be honest. Like if you're, I don't know, like what level you would kind of cut it off at, but like you just don't have the kind of money to like
No.
to make something like that happen. So what do? Do you just postpone it endlessly, or do you just put it
Try.
out eventually and just to what, and whatever will happen kind of thing. So
Yeah.
it sucks, you know what I mean? But like I think at some point you just have to go, okay, this is it out now.
Yeah.
And because you might, because an album to me should be like where you're at and at that time kind of thing. Like
Yeah, I agree.
it's not gonna have it's not gonna feel the same after a certain amount of time. So I don't know, like yeah.
So what's your guys' plans? So say lockdown carries on to say January, for example. Do you think about maybe doing new music, or are you just going to try and pick up where you left off and still continue the promotion for All Flesh is Grass?
I think
we have been working. Like we have been working away. Like I've been at it. I mean, the second I finished recording All Flesh is Grass, I was writing again.
Right. Okay.
So I've not really stopped. And this year, because we've had like the extra time, like I think both of us have really kind of doubled down on what we're writing, and because of the time we've got to do it as well.
Yeah.
So we have been working away on stuff. Yeah, we can't really say too much about it.
I don't want to push this far.
I think yeah, like in terms of promoting the album, like I think effectively that stopped after lockdown, like that kind of just, that whether we wanted it to or not, that kind of put a full stop on things.
Yeah.
We we were gonna do like another music video, like
Yeah.
for one of the songs on the album. We were gonna do this and that, like all the stuff that you would do, like more tours and stuff like that. But it just kind of felt like, well, like I was kind of saying, like the moment's gone for that now. Like it like that was that time, and we just can't get it back anymore. So
it's all about kind of looking forward then instead of looking back.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that was kind of what, like, I just feel like we've got every mechanic out of that. Let's just do some new stuff kind of thing. Yeah. So like Ross said, like we were like, I think even in October we were like last year, like we were like, okay, so what's, like a month after the album came out, we were like, okay, what's album 2 going to be about? What's this going to be? What's that like? And then we did a lot of like, we've done some demoing over summer, and we've got new stuff kind of on the way, like which we can't, as well said, we can't say too much about yet. But like, yeah, I think just looking forward, like the album's done. Like that's finished now. Like what else have we got? Let's find something new to do, kind of thing.
Yeah,
it's exciting for us and for listeners too.
Yeah, definitely. Obviously, I don't want to push too much about new stuff because nothing's announced yet. So from like All Flesh is Grass, is there stuff? Because obviously it's an album that's got so many ideas. Like it really, like, I don't want to call you a local band. That feels like putting you down, because you're definitely more than that. But I wasn't ready for the kind of scope that the album had.
Yeah.
Like, especially like the kind of keys and stuff. Like, I know they're a bit of a dirty name now, but I don't know if you remember when Heart Machine broke, and they were like the hot. Right, yeah. So before they became like potential arsonists, like they were great. But that was the sort of vibe I was, especially from the keys and stuff like that. I know you do all that, Ross. Like, has it got a real kind of Middle East feel, almost?
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I think naturally in like the kind of keys and sounds I write with does kind of lend itself to that sort of feel. But like I've even seen over time, like from doing our first kind of EP to the first album to doing, like other demos and like preparing for a second album, like the sound, or like more like the sound choice has kind of changed.
Yeah.
Maybe like a little bit less actually like Eastern sounding in places now, but
right, okay.
like the notes themselves are still quite similar.
Right, okay.
That's always just been something that's kind of interested me personally, like in terms of just how something sounds. Like I really love, like I always joke about in the chat, like, oh, I love really, like, if you put jangly synths over it, like, I'm going to love it.
Yeah.
Like, it's not exactly 100% true, but, like, yeah, it's just, it's always, like, a kind of layer and a texture that I enjoyed in music, even when I was, like, a little guy. I found myself really kind of drawn to music that had, like, all those extra layers, so it's always just made sense for me to write with them. And, like, I remember writing, like, I guess, like, my first ever song, so I'd have been like 16, I guess. And even then, I was kind of like playing away with keyboards and stuff.
Yeah,
and
like you weren't
that.
just writing 4 chords and a breakdown.
Yeah, so it's always been, even when I was doing much like more simple music, it's always been like a part of it. So it's just made sense to always have it there, and it'll stay there.
Good.
It's kind of like a flexible aspect of the music. Like you can do a lot of different things with like guitars, bass, and drums, but like the vibe, just the tone can change so much just with what sort of key sounds you're saying. Like definitely the Heart Machine.
Yeah,
I would say like definitely like a good sort of what I'm looking for, like
comparison
reference point.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly for that. But yeah, it's quite a different thing, and like people have taken to it in different ways. Some people don't like it so much, but some people really like it. So but I think we like it as part of the music. You know, I think it makes it feel different. You know.
Yeah. No, it just adds so much to it. Like I wasn't really expecting something like that when I listened to the album for the first time. Like it kind of reminds me of that sort of time period when it was like the Heart Machine and Born of Osiris were doing the Discovery, and kind of After the Body were on in Dreams. Like that time when that scene was really exciting. Like I don't want to just lump you in with all the tech metal bands, but there was a time when that was like the most exciting scene in metal for me anyway. And I've not heard someone do that thing for so long.
I think that was definitely a thing for me though. Like when I was kind of, I've kind of moved past the teen years and like was getting into more, I guess like metalcore is probably the like kind of general term for it. But like, I was like, wow, there's all these bands and they have like there's cool chuggy guitars and riffs and stuff, but like, wow, they have loads of like extra stuff over and above it. Like even Periphery as well opened kind of a lot of doors for me, and the idea that I could record sitting here, like in my room.
Yeah,
and like
a full album
in my room, and like all the guitars are done in my room, and the vocals were as well. Like I feel like those bands actually like they've changed a lot over time, and Sumerian specifically seem to get a lot of heat for it. But like I think people do forget that in that sort of like 2008 to 2012 kind of time period, there were a lot of bands and a lot of albums really like maybe not breaking the boundaries, but definitely like kind of redefining where they sat in them and like what kind of sounds were viable for a heavy band to have. So yeah,
I
think
totally
they
agree
for it, but maybe not as much credit these days because of just how they've developed as bands.
I think it's the same.
It'll probably come back around eventually because I like sort of 2012. That was like sort of later high school years for me, and I remember like all those bands that you referenced there. Like I remember buying Metal Hammer and getting like it was like one year it was like a Total Gent CD, and it was like Uneven Structure, After the Burial, like all the like
it's all of them.
All those bands, and you're like, oh, I've never heard anything like this before. Like, and I liked Periphery. They were like one of my favorites at that point. And I think that's so like, even though that's like 10 years ago now, like I think that's why it like that was a hugely formative period for people like ourselves. That was the kind of scene we had when we were really excited about like, and becoming metal fans, kind of thing. So,
exactly.
Why I think it makes sense that that's what we would write.
Because it feels like everyone like around our sort of age, it was all like your Kill Switch Engage and Bullet for My Valentine and stuff like that. And then as you got older, I feel like everyone sort of kind of made that turn to either you didn't really listen to metal anymore, or you were getting into the kind of heavier, techier stuff. And that's when that sort of expanded. Like these bands weren't Meshuggah clones; they were like taking these new ideas and adding it to it. But it just kind of came and went. So then when I heard your album, like I don't want to say it sounds like it's 10 years old, but like it reminded me so much of like a 2019 take on that thing.
Yeah, I think a few people have kind of said that to us. Like it's not particularly. I don't think it's a particularly groundbreaking like album we've done or anything, but like a lot of people have kind of turned around and said to us, like actually, like the reason they've enjoyed it so much is because it does sound in places like similar to those older bands. Like there was definitely like the Heaviest podcast had kind of spoken about it and reviewed the album, and they said it sounded like kind of older Silosis, like first album,
I can
like
hear that,
stuff like that. And I was like, that's kind of what I got into listening, you know, at that point as well, like that kind of 2008 to 2012. So I think a lot of what we do carry over in terms of writing does come from like a really specific period in time, even though it does take influence from a lot of different things.
Yeah, obviously, like there's obviously like, a lot of influence outside of metal as well. You can really hear that, like see the kind of interlude track and stuff like that, like Aspire, and then the last, especially Blood Moon at the end. Like
Yeah.
to call that song like just a metal song would be doing it dirty. Like there's so much in that one track.
Yeah,
like,
there's a lot of
Yeah.
a lot of different tracks on that. Yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine, Ross. That was a nightmare for you to do.
After like 2 minutes, and then
Yeah.
it's just like, oh,
Yeah.
Like,
the outro for that is old though. Like,
oh really?
I kind of started writing not the vocal part or anything, but like the
Yeah.
actual like song from that kind of middle section onwards is quite like old now. And I guess I would have maybe written not at that time, but like it definitely. I mean, when I was writing the album, I really needed an outro, and I was like, actually, that would be like a really nice way to kind of close it out. It's just the thing I wrote first in that style.
Oh, okay. Even if that's your first attempt,
I just kind of like,
fuck me if you expand on that.
well, not the like kind of technical riffs or anything, but that kind of chord section of the outro.
Yeah.
I was like, it's a nice way for me to kind of close out.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it works nice because if you listen to it the way I did, like on a loop. So when that, I feel like, I don't know if it was something you wrote intentionally, like how every song does really bleed into the next one. So when the album ends, if it goes right back to the start again, it almost feels like an endless journey. Like every song really blends into the next one. Like the last track and the first song
totally would,
seamlessly go in together.
It totally would, because
I've never noticed that.
so like the album starts and it's written like, it's a bit kind of like nerdy, but like it's all based around kind of like E, the key of E and the key of B. And then about halfway through, on the back of the interlude track into the Dreich, it switches into a different key.
Right, okay.
But the original key is like the sort of harmony of that note. So that would actually, if you did play it on a loop, it would just kind of blend into itself.
Like it generally just like seamlessly goes back to the start without you really noticing. I wonder if that was something you intentionally done.
It definitely not intentionally to go back to the start, but to like blend into each other. Like I think that's just naturally the way I kind of write stuff.
Yeah.
Like our EP's done like that, and the newer demos and stuff are kind of done in the same way. I think just it's natural for me to write, like, I guess with a bigger picture in mind.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's just more interesting for me.
Not fair.
Yeah. I think that like we both approach it the same way. Like I wasn't a deliberate thing, but I think when it comes to like, it's like there's like a preset theme to what you're writing. Kind of, you're gonna write. You're like, okay, I'm in this key and this other stuff I'm gonna write, and it's not just I mean, it's kind of random, but like it's kind of like setting those limitations on yourself.
Yeah,
so you can be creative within those, so you're not just kind of like jumping from place to place. It's a bit more deliberate that way, and I think you get more a certain idea that way, you know. So
I find there's nothing worse than having like a blank canvas with like no limits. So like even on these newer tracks, I kind of set myself a bit of a box, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, right, you can use this, and this, but like try not go outside that limitation, like at first, so you can get a sort of structure to it all, and then you can build on top of it. Because
so it's more of like a kind of controlled chaos than just everything everywhere.
Because I feel like if you do have no limitations, I won't actually get anything done. Because it's just an endless cycle of like, oh, what about that sound, or what about that sound, oh, what about this, or that. It never ends. So like sometimes I just kind of like to either set up a boundary or just a bottom line and be like, nah, you know what, that is done.
Yeah.
And it kind of goes back to what Josh was saying as well about like the album representing like a kind of part in time, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just nice to kind of draw a line under it and be like, you know what, that was 2018 done, 2019 done, 2020 is going to be a little different. But yeah, I think it's good to have those kind of feelings towards what you're working on. So
no, definitely.
Sorry, I was just going to say, I don't think I would have been able to write lyrics for the album had I not done that, because it's basically all linear, and you're like, it's not like a verse chorus where you're going to go, okay, I know where it goes here, I know it goes here.
Yeah, I can repeat that later on.
I was like, okay, I need to like, you have to come up with something like a concept or a theme, otherwise you're going to lose the plot. You're like, where does this begin and end? Because all the tracks blend into one another. There's no choruses, kind of. So it's odd. So yeah, like you kind of have to think about writing differently, I guess.
Well, that's actually going to be my next question for you, Josh. It was like, if the songs are kind of bleeding into one and one, do you do the same with your lyrics? Like, do you keep the same? Like, obviously, I know it's a lot about like pollution and world problems right now. Do you keep those? Do you try and continue the narrative in the same way that the songs
Yeah,
continue into each other?
100%. Yeah, like I think the first songs. Correct me if I'm wrong, Ross. I think it was it Inertia, Haze, and Salvation were the first ones we kind of demoed.
Yeah,
for
we
the
did
album.
those because they had a bit more like new territory in terms of
Okay.
like the sound of the
Yeah, it was
vocals.
like from a sort of vocals standpoint, it's like melodic stuff and melodic aspects to those. But I think those were Salvation, if you like, is kind of like the title track of the album. I always think,
Right. Okay.
and it's kind of like everything is based around that moment kind of thing, and everything kind of works around it. So when you have those lyrics, and that's where you start the theme, and then you kind of that's like the event in the album kind of thing. That's where I'm like I sum up the album themes in that song.
Right. Okay.
And then before it is, how do I get to that point? And everything after that is, where does that thought process take me? And that's
right. Okay.
kind of how I wrote the lyrics for it. Like that seemed like the most sensible way to do it. I think if I'd just been, like I was saying, if it had been random and you were just like, I'm going to write a song about this, so this, so this,
Yeah.
like I think it would have got lost, and I don't think it would have been this cohesive. Whereas if you've got this thing that, like repeating kind of mantras or phrases or something like that, then you can bring them back and you can kind of like, here's a beginning, middle, and end to this album, and then I can just fill in the blanks as opposed to song per song by song, if that makes sense.
No, definitely. Like, I think because like we were just saying, that kind of works in tandem with the music because there is kind of like similar themes. There's like how you switch from one key to like the melody of that key.
Mm-hmm.
So like, I think the two things work in totem really well.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure if that was just something he's consciously done or it's just like a really happy accident.
I think Ross did that, and I was like, okay, Jesus, how the hell am I going to write?
Yeah.
Like, this, because I'd never written anything that, like, written vocals, anything as technical as that before, so it was like really, it was really daunting at first, and I was like, well, break this down for myself and make it easier for myself, like, you split it into chunks, and then you can kind of do it like that. So it makes sure that it's easier for you to think about it, but it also makes sure if you've got something to say in your lyrics that you want to talk about, it means you can kind of go into more detail on them, and be more specific. You can write more lyrics because like I think if you do, you can broach a theme very broadly, but you can also be very detailed in it if you kind of plan ahead and stuff like that. So that's
definitely.
The idea behind that, I guess.
So was there the first time I heard yours was, I'm going to butcher the name of this, I'm so sorry, Exsanguinated? Is that right?
Exsanguinated? Yeah, that's pretty close.
So, that was the first time I heard you.
Spell it is fine.
Was there like a conscious reason, like was that left off the album because it didn't fit those themes or the music, or was it just like you wanted that to be its own standalone thing?
So they are on the album originally. Exsanguinated is where Silent Spring is.
Right. Okay.
It's pulled out, and like it's a more like not a direct swap, but like it was in that sort of spot, and we'd had a bit of I kind of got to a point where we were like, we really need to do something. Like, we've got this album like done, like written and ready to go, but like we don't have a drummer. So like it kind of was getting into that point of like, well, how can we really keep touring this or do tours? Like I think we were kind of struggling to like make that step to like being a touring band.
Yeah. That's the big, like, that's the next big hurdle, really, isn't it?
Yeah, like I feel like once you kind of do a couple of tours, like it begins to sort of come together. But like getting those first, I would say, first one is like a bit of a step. So I think we were kind of like, right, we really should put something out, like just so we've got something out this year done. And I don't really know how we chose that track. I think I was just a bit like.
We'd been playing it live as part of our first shows we played. We did play it live, just as something else kind of thing. But yeah, it was like Ross was saying, it was about keeping visibility. Like we got a little bit of like kind of like attention from the EP, but we're like, okay, we actually need to, like, before we commit to doing an album, we need to like just have something out kind of thing. So that was the one that was closest to being like a fully realized song, and it was very like it's not very long. It's very immediate kind of thing.
Yeah, it just comes roaring out at you. Like I see what you mean. It can stand alone. Like when you're writing an album, where every song blends into one. If you take away both things either side of it, can that song hold up on its own? And I kind of see what you're coming from. Like that does stand by itself.
Yeah, I think the album, it was difficult picking singles a lot of time for the album just because of the nature of it. But I think that was a song that we felt, I don't know, it was one we demoed, and it was just one that was something.
Yeah, just something you can put out.
It's like, okay, here's something brand new, and then we can worry about the album in the meantime while we're playing shows off the back of that kind of thing.
Yeah. So was that kind of always the plan then, to do an album? Like, I thought it's again, not to call you a local band, but it's quite ambitious to do a full length instead of most of these bands just trying out EP after EP.
I mean, when we kind of started the band, I think we had kind of like, I don't really know if you would call it like high aspirations, but it was very like, we need to just aim for an album.
Yeah.
Like, is there any point in doing EPs? Is there any point in doing singles? Like, or should we just kind of go hard with it? And then like in the process of kind of writing that album, I was like, actually, I've got these. So we did like a song once, and then we did like an EP, and the EP was a bit more like, okay, so I've got these 3 songs that are done. Like, we should put something out and use it to give us a bit of a lift. And then, the next year we did another single, which was Exsanguinated, and then we've done the album. So it has kind of accidentally built up that way, but like the idea was always to do an album. Like I've started it, early on in the whole process of being a band. And like even I'd come into the band as a bit of I could play guitar. Like I didn't really expect to write as much or all of it as I do now. I didn't think I would be that way because I'd never really been the main writer in a band before.
Right, okay.
It was quite kind of daunting, to be honest. Like,
I bet
I've actually got to like put together like an album.
Yeah, and these people are relying on me to kind of be the one to do it all.
It's a bit like if I crack during this, like, well, what's gonna happen?
Yeah.
So I'd say like I always personally was aiming for an album, but like I'm glad we did a few other odds and ends along the way.
Yeah.
I think it's actually like quite a good, I don't really want to call it a model, but I think it's definitely a way to help a band just get a little bit on their feet, especially if they're like, because I feel like we've always kind of had stuff that sounds quite realised, like in terms of what it actually sounds like, whereas like if a band's maybe a bit younger, I feel like an EP is maybe a good way to just...
I was just saying, I think if you're still figuring out your sound, then committing to something like an album might not make sense because it just could end up being like quite a mixed bag, and not in quality sense, just in a sonic sense. Like it could be,
it's just not coherent at all.
Yeah, exactly. So you're looking for coherence, and I think, if the album hadn't been coherent, we maybe wouldn't have done that. But like, I think just because it is written by one person, then it kind of helps. And like you say, like I think if you're a bit younger, that can be daunting. But I think because we've done different bands, like it just made, I think we're just at a point where like, let's just go for it, and then let's not waste any time, kind of thing. If we know what we want and we know what we want to sound like, then
especially like how you were saying, if it was because it was 2019 was when you got your proper like lineup sorted, wasn't it? That's when Tim came in, is that right?
That's right, yeah.
Bless him.
I mean, if I was a drummer and you told me my first gig was at Tech Fest, I'd be throwing punches. Talk about throwing someone in at the deep end.
He's a very calm individual.
All right, okay.
He's like a sort of calming voice of reason at this point now.
Right, okay.
If you like, if Tim's freaking out about something, then I'll maybe freak out about it. But
I say no, it's bad.
The canary, you know what I mean? If he's not worried about it, I'm not worried about it, Nice. But that was kind of the deep end. I mean, not that it was like easy for us either. It wasn't.
No, of course not.
Like it was incredibly daunting, but like at the same time, like if I was Tim, I'd be like, that's a lot.
I think it's an unfortunate thing for us though, like along the way, and like it definitely took us a long time to find a drummer, like just somebody who could play the stuff, but somebody who could like really sort of rise to the, I don't really want to call it a challenge, but like I feel like
It's not easy music to play. Yeah.
That's just because me and like us, because we're in the band. But like I think like to audition and really just go for it, like, is quite a daunting process.
Mm-hmm.
And like I don't feel like we're a big band. Like we're not. I still kind of consider us a bit of a like, oh, we're just like, 4 or 5 dudes, like 4 of us from Glasgow and 1 of us from down south. Like I don't know, but like I guess coming into that, like a lot of people are quite daunted by it. But Tim he came in, he sent us a few videos, came up and practiced. That was cool. Came up and practiced again, and then played his first show.
It's just mad how things like that work out, though. Like, how do you even go about finding a drummer from England to come play for you? It's like, how is that a thing?
While, man. Like, we were searching for drummers for quite, and we played with a few fill-in drummers who were great.
Yeah.
But I think ultimately they need to want to do it, and
yeah, for sure.
It's like all like the drummers that we kind of like that filled in for us were all amazing players. I mean, but like finding someone like not even on a personality level, just like, do you want to do this? Because it's quite a lot to commit to, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I think if they've got other projects or something like that they want to do, or like they're just not in that place in their life, then that's fine. Do you know what I mean? That's totally their call. But I think Tim was looking for what we were looking for as well.
Yeah. So yeah,
I can't even mind how we met, how we got in touch. Was it Will that got in touch with Tim, or somebody like that?
Will spoke to him on, like, he puts up little Instagram videos of his drumming, and I think Will kind of found him through that. And
yeah, I feel like that's a big step. Like, obviously you had the album, getting the lineup, but then obviously we were talking about it before we started recording, Ross, but like the fact he's done it all independently as well, like, it is a big financial risk if you were to take a session musician out. Like, you've put everything into it yourself, you wrote it, and obviously you're saying you didn't master it, but you still recorded it all yourself as well with no backing whatsoever.
Yeah, I mean guitars were done sitting in here. I think we did some vocals in here and some kind of friends, like, kind of studio space, but yeah, it was all kind of in-house.
Yeah.
And yeah, like, it was a very DIY sort of release, like, down to the literal, like, ordering of the CDs and the merch.
Yeah.
And Tim was very, very kind enough to come in the middle of that process and,
split it 5 ways, like,
to that as well. Like, that, I think we were always a bit like, oh, that's a bit of a big ask. Like, you've not been there for any of it, but like, do you still want to be a member of the band? And then he was just like, off the bat, like, yeah, I want to contribute to this. I want to make it happen. So I was like, at that point, I was like, right, this is a no-brainer. Like, this is the
guy.
The pieces kind of fall into place, and this is the guy. Like, it was great.
Yeah, there's so many like costs already. If you're splitting out between 4, never mind 5, is hard,
Yeah.
But I think you just, I don't know, like, it's just so much better when you've got like a full lineup and you don't need to worry about that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Like, you know that everyone's into it. Like, that's the battle, isn't it? Like,
Yeah.
I know we can go back from, Johnny, and put something in the band group chat that's just us, and like the response will just be, yeah, great, cool, love it,
do it.
Everybody's like on the same page. It's nice.
Yeah. But like, especially with the whole being like independent thing, like, you have kind of no one to tell you no at the same time. Like, obviously there's definitely pros and cons for if you did have a label backing you, like, with advances and things like that. Is that something you would want to do, or are you happy to be doing it all yourselves and churning it out yourselves?
Would be like, we're not interested in it, but it need to be the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't think a concept album with not many singles on it is necessarily what a lot of labels are probably looking for.
I totally understand the label side of it. Like, that's not an easy sell. So like, is somebody really going to be interested in it? Like, or they might be. Like, I don't know. It depends kind of what comes through the door almost.
Yeah.
Like, what into the inbox. Like, it's not the be all and end all for me personally. Like, I'm not kind of sitting here championing it, like, oh my god, we need to get a label. Like, that's the only reason we're doing this. But like, if one was to knock on the door and
it was a good fit for both parties, then
yeah, it's a good fit. They're positive about the music, like we're positive about the label and their roster, maybe.
Yeah.
Absolutely try and work something out.
Not good. So, yeah.
Like it is that way. Like it really does depend on like what it is and like when it is as well. Like I think us leading up to the first album, like would have going onto a label been a good thing for it? Like maybe not. Like maybe it is something we just needed to do ourselves.
Yeah, can I get that experience?
The back of it, where like actually that was a lot of grunt for for it. Like for us, like would we maybe be better like getting somebody else in to take the reins or whatever? And that's largely why we're working with someone like Johnny now as well.
You learn so much doing it by yourself that if you hadn't done it by yourself, you might not be as well equipped to deal with these things.
If they come up later on.
Yeah, and if they start and if things are taken from your hands, like if you're getting a raw deal kind of thing, you might not recognise it. But I think doing an album by yourself definitely like alleviates some of that. Like, and you're already in that headspace before you got a label. So, I mean, a label's only really should be coming in to kind of like further what you're already doing, as opposed to
it's kind of just assistance. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, I think I definitely I was kind of in the obviously we were talking about earlier like the sort of time scale and like Sumerian records and stuff, and I feel like during that time there were a lot of like I would call them labels, but like they weren't really doing anything for bands. Like spamming other bands' Facebook accounts isn't PR.
That's not promotion. Yeah.
Facilitating the digital only release of an album is not good. Like it's not helpful for a band. It's not doing anything for them. So I'm very like, why would you get a label to do that when you could do it yourself, other than when it gets to the point that it's too much for you, or signing to said label is going to really like Josh says, like give you that leg up or give you that next step and support you into making just a better run of it that you're already trying to do.
Yeah. Like I think kind of like what you were saying about like how the whole periphery thing, like bands like that really did teach you that you can record an entire album in your bedroom and it can sound the way your album sounds. Like your album sounds so polished. Like these are things that you can do with like on your own, just you and your four mates. Like you don't need all these.
I think periphery are a very good example of that, because like obviously Misha Mansour had his sort of years just online himself.
Yeah, the whole kind of bulb stuff.
He would post demos that, like, looking back, you're like, right, this isn't exactly like groundbreaking quality, but like you at the time, like, holy shit, the guy's done this in his room on his like laptop. Wow, this is amazing.
I think that seems where things started to really. I feel like even with your trivia and things like that, like there was a certain facade, and the music industry still had way more money back then.
Yeah.
Whereas now, like I feel like that scene was where things started to break down, like people's impression of what the music industry was and what it actually was.
Yeah.
Kind of broke down, and people realised, like you're saying about Periphery, like that he was doing it all himself, and you're like, oh, you actually can do that. There's no reason why you can't, you know.
Even the way they kind of signed like to labels to get that first album out as well, though, like I'm pretty sure it's signed to like different labels in different territories.
Yeah.
So they kind of took the like, my understanding of it at the time was they took the sort of best deal available for each point, and then like over time they kind of just phased into the one label.
Yeah.
But they're on their own label now. They have their own label and they're back to being, you know, fully, I mean, I guess you could call it DIY, like despite the fact
I guess so, yeah.
With a label, it's their label, so
yeah. Is that kind of like Enter Shikari model? Like I know they're a weird band to make a comparison to, but they've never been signed. They're the only unsigned band to ever headline Brixton Academy because they've done what Periphery done. Like they started their own label, signed themselves, and then put their album in it.
I think I love Enter Shikari, man. That's that's so cool.
My memory of Enter Shikari was covering "Sorry You're Not a Winner" at
of
school,
course.
and I hated every waking minute of it because I just hated rapping.
Mate, if you were in 2008 and you were in a band and you weren't covering "Sorry You're Not a Winner" or Unholy Confessions, what were you doing? You know what I mean?
Gosh, I was before that. I was like 2000. maybe 2006 sounds about right.
What? So you're just covering what, like End of Heartache instead or something? Then acting better than everyone.
No, I just checked out by that.
So obviously you're working on new music. Do you have any other plans for the rest of this year or next year? Or are you just kind of pausing everything right now?
I mean, if we're not pausing, I wouldn't say we're pausing, but like obviously there's a limit to what we can expect to do. We're definitely doing stuff before the year's out. You'll
Cool.
hear from Godeater before then, but I think shows and stuff like that, like
it's just all up in the air.
Next year, like
we are booking into next year, and like, we've had a few things come through, but like it is that kind of thing where like, I mean, I'm sure you know it as well as I do, like working in like a club or like a venue and stuff, you're a bit like, I don't really know how this is going to go. Obviously there's nothing before the end of this year, but like we have booked a few things into next year, so it's really kind of balls in our court to
just hope it goes ahead.
Release something for that, I guess.
Well, okay.
But yeah, we're sitting on a few things, and it hopefully won't be too long before we can.
Good, so we can expect like kind of things coming out of the Godeater camp in the coming kind of months and year.
Things guaranteed.
Big things are coming and they're coming soon.
Moderately
things, they're big and they're coming soon. That's all you need to know.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for coming on, guys. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, man. I enjoyed it.
Good luck for the rest of your year and all these big things you have. So thank you so much.
Moderately sized,
Right. Cheers, guys. I'll see you next time. And thank you so much for coming on.
No worries.
See you.